let us all do we can to build a better future. This has been taking social media and the news by storm with what has been happening to Dr. Cornel West. So Dr. Cornel West quits Harvard with a blistering letter attacking racism and spiritual rot at the university. So this is an article from The Independent. Numerous other media outlets have been covering this. I think it's very important that we talk about this because, again, Dr. Cornel West has been one of the leading activists, organizers, and voices calling for a better future.
You've even interviewed him.
A long time ago. I'd love to do a follow-up interview with him, perhaps someday. Not today, but I think it's very important that we do talk about this because he's voicing concerns, not only what's happening with higher education, but also, again, just what is happening to our country as a whole. So let's talk about this. So philosopher and activist Dr. Cornel West has resigned from his position as professor with Harvard University in a letter that slams the university for treating him and other black faculty members with disrespect despite specific commitments made by the school. Again, this wouldn't probably be the first time that Harvard failed to follow up with its commitments. In a letter sent to the school at the end of last month and published on Twitter by Dr. Cornel West on Monday, the acclaimed activist and orator wrote that Harvard officials reorganized his classes so that all courses taught by the first ever black graduate of Princeton doctorate philosophy program would be considered to be under the umbrella of the Afro-American religious studies. Other transgressions of university alleged by Dr. Cornel West include refusing to let him take a previous agreed-upon year-long sabbatical, poor salary conditions, and the accusation that university officials even failed to reach out with condolences after the death of his mother, just as they allegedly failed to do after one of his colleagues experienced a similar loss. And again, Dr. Cornel West, we do send our condolences to what happened. But this injustice needs to be talked about even further because, hang on, this happened to one of his fellow colleagues as well. The letter's publication follows a public dispute between Dr. Cornel West and the university over his tenure application, which was denied in February. Again, Harvard, what are you doing? Dr. West has alleged that the denial stems from his public support for the Palestinian people and the political prejudices of Harvard's administration. It also just comes days after a similar controversy erupted at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, where journalist Nicole Hannah-Jones of the New York Times declined a tenure position at the school after members of the board raised concerns about her credentials and threatened to derail the process, likely as a result of conservative backlash of her work on the 1619 Project, which looks at the role of race in America's founding. Going down further into the article, Ms. Hannah-Jones, who, like Dr. Cornel West, is black, opted instead to take on the tenure position at Howard University in a move that was publicly humiliating for UNC and left professors and others at the school openly questioning the administration's management. In his letter, Dr. West wrote, "The actions of Harvard's administration betrayed an intellectual and spiritual bankruptcy of deep depths at the university." Here's a quote from his tweet, or from his letter. Apologies for that mistake. "With a few glorious and glaring acceptations, the shadow of Jim Crow was cast in its new glittering form, expressed in the language of superficial diversity," wrote Dr. West. A university spokesperson declined to comment on Dr. West's letter and when contacted by The Independent. So can we also pull up the tweet here real quick as well? Now again, let's get that image set up. There we go.
It's you know, Harvard's very exclusive.
Yep.
For a very specific reason.
Yeah, and again, it calls into question the role of higher education. Again, Harvard, you know you screwed up. So this is a tweet from Dr. Cornel West, and again, you can find this link in the show notes and description box below. This is my candid letter of resignation to my Harvard dean. I try to tell the unvarnished truth about the decadence in our market-driven universities. Let us bear witness against this spiritual rot. So here's, I don't know if maybe we have some time just to cover just a few short sentences from this letter. So here's when it was written, June 30th of 2021. "I hope and pray you and your family are well. This summer is a scorcher." Can't argue with that on the West Coast. "Here is my brief and candid letter of resignation. How sad is it to see our beloved Harvard Divinity School in such decline and decay. The disarray of the scattered curriculum of disenchantment of talented yet differential faculty and the distortion of previous students loom large. When I arrived 4 years ago with a salary less than what I received 15 years earlier and with no tenure status, after being a university professor at Harvard and Princeton, I hoped and prayed I could still end my career with some semblance of intellectual intensity and personal respect." Here we go with this one. "How wrong was I? With a few glorious and glaring exceptions, the shadow of Jim Crow was cast in its new glittering form, expressed in the language of superficial diversity. All my courses were subsumed under Afro-American religious studies, including those on existentialism, American democracy, and the conduct of life. No possible summer salary alongside the lowest increase possible every year, yet I delivered 2 convocational addresses and 1 commencement speech. In 4 years, I was promised a year sabbatical, but could only take 1 semester in practice. Now, again, to all of our viewers, you could read this full letter in its entirety, but again, look what's happening to Dr. Cornel West. Look what's happening at Harvard University. You would expect an institution that would, pride itself of being this bastion of higher education. They failed miserably. And again, Dr. Cornel West, he is somebody that has made a huge political impact in our political discourse. He is somebody who's willing to speak to Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Greens, Socialists, Independents, people who are not even involved in politics at all. He's been on Tucker Carlson's show, Jimmy Dore's show. He's been on numerous media platforms. He's somebody who's been around. He even helped out the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2016. He was important during that campaign. I mean, you saw this firsthand. So I want to hand this over to Daniel with a final note, but this is a huge injustice by Harvard University towards Dr. Cornel West.
Yeah, so again, he has committed a crime, though. It's a very heinous crime. It's one of the worst crimes you can commit in this sort of a situation, in this sort of a movement, organization, education, whatever. That's not, that's fighting the groupthink. Cornel West, what he speaks on, what he talks about, he's a well-known intellectual that is known far more than many of the professors in Harvard that have tenure. Why isn't he getting tenure? Why is he not getting time off? Why is he being given the shortest end of the stick? Why are all his classes on various topics all being kind of crammed into one category? He thinks differently in a university system that prides itself on having, something you can't get elsewhere. It's like the best professors, the best people. Pretty consistent mindset is what they're looking for as well. It seems, he's right. It's like if you're going to be the person that they does commencements, that they bring up there, that they want this public figure, this outspoken guy, but they don't want to give him tenure. And again, it's because he doesn't think the same as everyone else. And for us, I think everyone watching, I think it's the way that he thinks and the way he talks and the elegance in the way he's able to put these ideas together is commendable. But I'm sure from Harvard's point of view, not the right ideas. And I'm also sure from Harvard's point of view, which has a very strong endowment, which is very connected to the previous people, previous generations that went there and their control, Harvard doesn't want to lose however much money that they might get over one professor. Yeah. And it really shows Harvard is not as special as they put it out to be. Sure, they got some vines growing for a long time, but they got to work on what's inside the buildings.
I'll say this as a final note. When I'm always learning something new being involved with independent media. You always will be, especially if any of you choose to get involved in it. When I first met Dr. Cornel West, he treated me like an equal. He gave me his time, and I had a chance to speak to him and talk to him. It was one of the proudest moments of my life. And Dr. Cornel West has every right to write this letter and speak out his grievances towards Harvard University.
Now, the sad thing is that, so let's think of the outcome tree for this.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen? Are a lot of legacies that are shooed into Harvard going to all of a sudden go, oh, no, I'm going to go to Princeton instead? No, they're still going to go to Harvard. Ironically, and it's like, again, it's a position where what can you do?
Yeah.
Who are the only people that are going to take this letter serious at all?